Hi, everybody. This is Steve Monday, Chief Forecaster with Rowan County Weather, here with another edition of the Rowan County Weather Podcast, sponsored by William Ryan Enterprises Incorporated. If you're looking to build a custom home, or maybe you're doing some remodeling or renovating of your current home, William Ryan Enterprises Incorporated can help you under the blanket of their other companies, William Ryan Flooring and Supplies, and also William Ryan Roofing. Can help you get the complete job done. For more details on William Ryan Enterprises, you can give them a call at the phone number you see here on your screen or scan the QR code you see on the screen as well. Tonight's episode, we've got from WFNZ Sports Radio. He is the producer of the Mac and Bone show that comes on in the mornings there. He's also a co-host of the Heel Tough blog as well as the Four Corners podcast, Anthony Flounder Pagnotta, and he's going to be joining us in just a few moments. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get to Anthony Flounder Pagnotta right now.
Just looking at it and saying that this was a road game, you got away with one, so you should be happy. And I mean, I'm kind of where you're at. I do think that there are some differences, and we'll see them once we start talking about the game overall.
Hi, Anthony. Welcome to the program. Welcome to the Rowan County Weather Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on with us tonight.
Hey, what's going on, Steve? Hey, thanks so much, man. I know you're a huge listener to us over at WFNZ, and I could not be more honored to come on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate it and appreciate you guys giving me something to look forward to when I wake up every morning and get that cup of coffee in and go ahead and get the day started, just cracking up listening to you guys talking about all the sports we love here in the Queen City area.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's a ton of fun. I've been working with them for a little over 3 years now, and it's been awesome to be able to crack up with those guys, talk sports, bring the passion that I think everybody loves to hear on the radio, and at the same time, start to see some of the success that in the past, with the smaller signal, they just weren't able to see. So it's awesome watching them receive the ratings that they really deserve. So it's been a trip these last 3 years, man, for sure.
Definitely. So tell the folks that are listening, that get to listen to you on, WFNZ every morning. Tell them about really some of the behind the scenes stuff. I know you guys obviously do some great stuff on the air, and even off the air. You've got some great community events and things like that going on. But you guys also have a really tight relationship with each other. I know there's some camaraderie that goes on back and forth, but just tell the folks about how tight that crew is really.
Well, I mean, look, man, it's special. They were the group that when I got to the station back in 2018 as an intern, that was who they put me with. And I think when they put me with them, honestly, they thought that, oh, we're going to put them in the morning. This is, really going to test them here. And the thing is that I didn't know it at the time, but I was only supposed to come in 1 day a week. I came in 5 days a week and no one ever told me, but I just loved it, man. I thought that being around them was just the funnest thing in the world. And so, we kept in contact. And then when there was a job opportunity that opened up, Travis, T-Bone, as most of you guys probably know, he reached out to me and said, hey man, would you be interested in this job? I would love to suggest you for it. And he did. And it completely changed my life. And so I think, for us, it's just we're working with each other every weekday morning. We've been through a lot together, just in terms of our own personal lives and everything like that during that time. Yeah. And so I think it really just builds, a great friendship between them. And I know, Mac is in his 50s, right at 50. Bone's 40 years old. And for me, I'm 27. So, I mean, it's a little bit different in age range, but it honestly just feels like I'm hanging out with a group of my buddies. And that's the cool thing, man. And that's what I think is so relatable about all of us. And it's why I think we connect with the listeners so well.
Definitely. Now, away from WFNZ, you and Josh Fitty Marlowe, who also works there at the station, and he's on really more toward the, he really comes in right after you leave, to be quite honest with you. But you guys have a passion for the North Carolina Tar Heels. You do all kinds of different things for them, the Heel Tough blog, the Four Corners podcast. I actually played just before bringing you on, I played a little clip of the Four Corners podcast that the folks got to see. Tell us what, aside from the love that you guys have for the Tar Heels, what led to you wanting to do that?
Well, look, one of the things that happened in my life that really got me into that sort of stuff was, it was right before I was supposed to graduate community college, back in 2016, and just really having a tough time with everything. And then I go through, a stretch of anxiety and depression. And it's still something I deal with to this day. I've definitely, especially in the last couple of years, have had my battles with it and everything like that. But really back in that time, it was a comfort. It was something to get my mind off of it. And I said, let me start writing about the team that I love the most. And I really got into it. And it really started to take off. I was amazed by how many people wanted to read what my opinions were about the Tar Heels. And, all of a sudden, it really started taking off. And Josh was like, I know you're focusing on football. What if I focused on basketball? Because I'm the basketball guy out of the two of us. And so we really started working together and doing that stuff. And then eventually I go to broadcasting school at the Carolina School of Broadcasting. And I get the opportunity to start my podcast there, the Heel Tough Blog podcast, which covers the football side of things. And then the Four Corners podcast covers basketball, which originated as the Roy's Boys podcast. So both of those start around the same time. And from there, this is how we're wired now. And it's so fun, man. We get to cover this team. There's a lot of great guests that we've had on over the years, including Tar Heel football legends, Tar Heel basketball legends, some of the best national media members on both sides of things. And so it's a real great opportunity for us to be able to express our opinions about the team, which I think a lot of people really enjoy because, as you know, Steve, neither one of us really like to hold back. We really like to get out there and give you exactly how we're feeling. And I think that comes across, and I think people really like it. And so it's really taken off. This past month for the Four Corners podcast, we had over 14,000 downloads for the month. So people, for Carolina basketball content, they've really locked in on us. And Carolina football, especially since we started doing the live videos during the season, it's become really big. And so I think it's awesome. And the fact that it's now a part of WFNZ as well, that they took us in when we were looking for a hosting platform, I think it's been amazing. And the fact that it all ties in together now, it just makes it such a cool experience. And it's something that, for me and Fitty, it's something we love to share because, we've been friends, we've been Tar Heel fans since we were 11 years old. And it's amazing to see that it's gone this far.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny because you didn't get to see the clip obviously before I brought you on, but the clip that I shared was actually it kind of showed that passion. It was right after the Tar Heels had played Miami in basketball. The last 8 minutes of the game, the Heels literally went to the four-corner press and just stayed there. And you guys had a very passionate exchange with each other, but you kept it civil, but also, you shared Fitty was a little discouraged and disappointed that the Tar Heels just kind of shut it down at 8 minutes and didn't wait a little longer to shut it down. And you were more like, hey, look, this game was in hand. There was no need to continue to just drown the horse and kick it on down the river. It was time to get this thing over with and just move on to the next one. So very interesting that you just shared exactly what you said a moment ago about how you guys get after each other, but still show the passion. So tell us a little bit. Let's talk, let's go back to the NCAA tournament, really, that we just finished up. Obviously a very interesting tournament, to say the least. What would you say just covering the tournament in general, what would you say would be your biggest surprise from this tournament that we just saw?
Oh, of course, Steve, you got to do this to me because you want me to talk about NC State, but how could I not, man? It was just unbelievable. You're talking about a team that won 9 straight elimination games to get to the Final Four. We thought at one time that Kevin Keatts was pretty much cooked. Yeah. And you even go back to the first game of that 9-game run, and they didn't look great against Louisville for the majority of that game. And we're thinking, dude, this is where it's going to end. And this is how it's going to end with this thud. And from there, this team just, I mean, they first of all, they responded to the comments that Jim Boeheim said on the ACC network after that game. And I think that really sparked them. And it was amazing to watch. If he was not an NC State player, DJ Burns would have been a guy that
Yeah.
I would have been rooting for the entire way. Because he was such an interesting player. The body
Right.
size is something you don't see in basketball in general. And the thing is even some of those guys, when they're that big, and we saw it at times from him throughout the year, their impact isn't there because their stamina just doesn't
Right.
hold up, whatever. He put it into a whole nother gear for 9 games and really carried that team. And then DJ Horn, the local kid,
Yeah.
comes out, really takes his game to another level. And it was really everybody else. Michael O'Connell, who was great. He unfortunately gets hurt for them in the Final Four game. And that really played a big role in why I think they weren't as effective as they needed to be from the outside in the second half of that game against Purdue. But I mean, yeah, that's definitely got to be the storyline, because not only did it save Kevin Keatts' job, it brought back a program that ultimately we know that's what NC State does best. I know
Right.
that there's a lot of their fans, especially with the group that they're going to have this year, that want to talk about, this is a football school. If
Right.
you look at the history of NC State, though, this is a basketball school, man. They have had greats that have come through there. That 1974 team is one of the greatest teams that's ever stepped on a college basketball court. And I think, as much as for Carolina fans, we would hate it, them being back to, I wouldn't say even a powerhouse, but a team that could at least year in and year out finish 5th, maybe even jump up to 4th or 3rd occasionally, and sometimes have years like this where they make a
Right.
run in the ACC tournament. I think that would only be good for the rivalries in this area and would really bring back the great triangle area basketball
Yes.
that we hear about from back in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking about when you're talking. So obviously, I was born in 1975, but as I became a basketball fan, once I started to get old enough to grasp the concept of it, we were getting into the early 80s. And man, you talk about a stretch of just fun basketball, especially for the Triangle area. To see, the Tar Heels win it in 82, NC State to win it in 83, and then all of a sudden, you had not only the Tar Heels and State as powerhouses in the state, but you also had the Duke Blue Devils, who Mike Krzyzewski was really just getting started putting that program together. And man, it was some fun basketball to watch. And then all of a sudden, obviously, we know the rest of the story. The Tar Heels and the Blue Devils continue to just move right along. And right after Jim Valvano's era came to an end, NC State started to go the other way. So it would be nice to see a resurgence of that, because I understand that Tar Heel fans and Blue Devil fans would disagree with State having winning seasons, but it can only be better for all 3 of those schools together.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an argument, and that's the thing, is like, yeah, I think, we've gotten so used to, especially our generation, I think we've gotten used to the fact that NC State is the team that you kind of just beat up on. And look, man, I think the biggest thing is that, their fan base, they're so passionate, and sometimes it just feels like if you're on the other side of it, it feels a little much, and that's why it's hard for you to root for them to have success. But ultimately, yeah, if you just are a fan of great basketball in the Triangle area, you want NC State to be good, because when they are, I mean, the passion from all 3 fan bases is really strong.
Yeah.
And we've seen it, man. I mean, you saw how excited the college basketball world was when Carolina and Duke met in the Final Four. And then,
Yes.
I mean, look, it wasn't there at that level this year, but people were really excited. That was the game a lot of people locked in on in the Elite
Right.
Eight, was Duke and NC State, even though it was a 4 versus 11. Just that Tobacco Road rivalry, I think it really draws a lot of people in this area, and it draws a lot of people in nationally. And so I think if you're a national college basketball person, you could say that you want other great programs to be great, but NC State being great along with Carolina and Duke would just be huge for the sport, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we won't stay on state long, obviously, because I don't want to torture you the whole time you're on here.
Thank God.
But yeah, but let's just talk real quickly, really about the brilliance of Kevin Keats' agent to have the clause in the contract of if we win the ACC tournament, he gets 2 more years. I mean, that was just a brilliant move that he probably at the time was tongue in cheek, going, "This isn't going to happen." And NC State probably same thing went, "Yeah, it's not going to happen. We're fine with that clause." And now here we are.
Yeah, well, the crazy thing too is that even after they end up winning the ACC tournament, a
Hmm.
lot of people are like, okay, they win the ACC tournament, that's great, they made a run, but man, ultimately, this is probably what we wanted, right?
Yeah.
Because state's going to probably lose in the first round of the tournament, and
Yep.
then next year they'll be back to being the same thing, and then they make this magical run, and this
Mhm.
is the thing: is a lot of people think that they will just return to what they have normally been. And I mean, look, it's possible, but more than likely, because you made it that far, people saw, that this is a program that has the type of passion that it does from its fan base. You're probably going to get a boost on the recruiting trail, in the transfer portal. And so, I mean, for Kevin Keats, like it's amazing that it went from his fan base just, I mean, completely being done with him to him getting that contract extension from winning the ACC tournament. It's still some state fans probably being like, oh man, is that really the best thing? To now, I think every NC State fan is bought in on Kevin Keats. And it'll be interesting to monitor, where things stand, especially if he doesn't come out of the gates as hot as the team was at the end of this year.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's go to your Tar Heels. Let's talk about them for a moment. So, obviously your end goal was for them to win the whole thing, I'm sure, but where they went out, would that be what you expected in your heart, or do you think they could have made it further?
So like, look, coming into the season, that's probably where I thought they were gonna
Yeah.
be, because you were expecting so much from a team that didn't make the NCAA tournament last year,
Mhm.
that you were basically piecing together through the transfer portal, and you were relying on a freshman in Elliot Cadeau to step up and be really, really good for you at a young age. And so I think as the season went along, the expectations definitely started to change, because you realize this is a really, really good team. And I knew it. I think once they, as weird as it sounds, when they lost the games to Kentucky and especially to UConn, I think you started to realize a little bit, this isn't exactly the same team as the last couple of years, because there was just a different feeling. You had reasons to believe that they were going to win both of those games, and that they were just missing a little bit
Right.
from whatever it was in order to close those games out. And I thought as the season went along, they would be able to close those games out. And once they got into conference play, they looked really, really good. I mean, they start conference play on a 9-game winning streak, and you're thinking to yourself, man, this looks like the Tar Heel teams that we're used to. And the best part is that you were having fun. Like in the last few years had just been miserable. Even when they found ways to win games, you were like, how in the world did we win this game? This was so ugly. Caleb Love, RJ Davis chucking up shots, whatever. But this year was just so much more under control.
Mhm.
And even when they went through the midseason slump, and there were a couple of things that were concerning. There was no doubt about that. But you still felt like after they came out on the other side of that and closed the season out strong, that this was a team that was in really good shape heading into the NCAA tournament. I mean, they had beat Duke twice. Both games they looked really, really good and really dominated Duke. With just the want to, and you thought that's what would carry them. And I thought, look, they fall short to NC State in the ACC tournament. And yeah, that sucked, but I really thought this will be what will motivate this team. But I knew when I watched them in Charlotte, that something wasn't right. I know they won both those games by double digits. I know it's the NCAA tournament. You're going to take that any day of the week. But something just felt a little off. And then you get to Alabama, and I kept trying to tell people, and I know you know this, Steve, because you listened to the show. Mac and Bone tried telling me that there's nothing to worry about. And I said, look, man, this is a great shooting team,
Yeah.
and scoring guards have hurt this team this year. and you saw a team that was as locked in with all 5 guys on the floor as you could possibly be. The way that they crashed the offensive glass, especially late in the game when they needed to get offensive rebounds. Grant Nelson was fantastic at the foul line, but it was the fact that they just made 3 after 3. That's really what killed Carolina. So yeah, coming into the year, I felt like that was probably where I expected that they would go out. But once I got to the NCAA tournament and saw them as a 1 seed, I'll admit, I thought, especially with how things opened up for them, I
Mm-hmm.
thought they would be in the Final Four. And it's why, it's hard not to feel just a little bit disappointed about how the
Sure.
season goes.
Yeah. I had them picked to play Arizona and then make their way to the Final Four. Yeah, so absolutely, I'm right there with you. I think you just pinpointed the issue there. I'm with much love and respect to Mac because I got nothing but love for the guy. When he told you not to worry, there's
I
there's
knew
your
it.
there's your issue right there.
Oh, God.
The Mac curse. Definitely. So, well, let's talk about the overall winner of the tournament. Did that surprise you at all? I mean, that UConn just took it all.
No. I will say this. Look, I picked them to win the tournament.
Yeah,
I did not think they would win every game by double figures. That
yeah,
is wild to me.
yeah,
And I mean, look, you just knew every game. You felt like there was a point where they would just make a run that the other team just had no answer for. And I mean, look, there was a point in that Alabama game where I said, oh, okay, maybe this team, the way they're shooting the ball, can sustain it. And then
yeah.
they find a way to just lengthen that lead out. When
Hmm.
they threw that knockout punch, there was nobody in the country that could withstand it because, and I said this back when we played them earlier in the year, I said there's not a guy on the floor that cannot hurt you on either end of the floor. They have so many different dudes that
Yeah,
are just so solid in every single area. Like when they needed a shot, you could turn to anybody on the floor. Where you look at some of the other teams in the country, take Carolina, for example, or even NC State. For Carolina, it was, hey, we need a shot. Well, we got to turn to RJ Davis. He's your guy. You got to put it in his hands. He's got to make a basket. NC State, you saw it in that game against Purdue. DJ Burns, yeah, but when he got taken away, it was up to DJ Horn to make shots and they
yeah.
wouldn't fall. With UConn, that was never the problem. You could
Right.
turn to anybody on the floor and they would step up and make a shot. And this is just, I mean, it's a great job by Danny Hurley. I
Yeah,
can't stand him. I think the way that he just complains is unbelievable to me. That national title performance from him on the sidelines was one of the most unreal things I've ever seen from a coach. Just, I mean, every chance he got in the ears of the ref.
yeah,
Honestly, I don't know how he coaches his team, but he
yeah.
does, man. And they have bought into what he's doing up there. And this is truly in my time. Now, that's the thing is I'm only 27, as I said earlier. That was the most dominant NCAA tournament run I have ever seen because I mean, especially you look at the first 4 games, they led in each of the first 4 games by 30 or more points at one point. I mean, that is just unheard of. And I mean, I don't know if we will see anything like that moving forward, but I'll tell you this. I think that Danny Hurley is a guy that, I know he's going to have to replace a lot. I would not doubt that guy
Yeah.
anytime in the near future.
Yeah. Well, to piggyback on what you just said, I would have to agree. And, I've even got, I've got about 22 years on you, right? So, but I'm going into the closest I can even come to is going back into the 90s with the UNLV team that had
Yep.
Larry Johnson on it. They were making a huge run. And then they ran into the Duke Blue Devils in the Final Four, and Grant Hill just played a masterful game that but had they gotten past Duke, I would almost say maybe UNLV could have had the most dominant run in history. But I got to agree with you. I think UConn's got it. I mean, really,
No,
it's
I
definitely.
mean, you're right. I mean, it's crazy to think. And yeah, that's the other one that I've heard a lot of people really compare to them. But yeah, I mean, this team, it's just to not even really, I mean, there are people that honestly have said to me, were they really tested? And I wouldn't say that. I think they were
Right.
tested, especially in that game against Alabama.
Mhm.
But the fact that you didn't even have a game that you won by single digits is
Right.
just, I mean, that is just insane, because every other one of these tournament runs, you go back and look and you're like, okay, well, there was this game where they got tested. Even their tournament run last year, which was incredibly impressive, they got tested in the first round. This run, I mean, from the word go, there was never a moment. And that's why, you know, I know Tar Heel fans, some of them are still hurt about the loss. And, you know,
Mhm.
same thing for Duke fans and State fans losing to Purdue. Ultimately, I don't think it mattered, guys. Whoever
Right.
got to that final, you were getting beat.
Yeah, you were not going to beat UConn. I don't care what you did. As a matter of fact, Rick Pitino. I don't really like Rick Pitino, but I did chuckle about when he was asked, what can you guys do to beat UConn tomorrow? And he said every one of them's got to come down with COVID. So,
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So let's go ahead and transition a little bit. Obviously, talking about basketball season coming to an end, we've got baseball season, which for college baseball, I don't know if you get the same feeling that I do. I think Major League Baseball just totally dominates college baseball in this area, and just folks really don't get into the college baseball until the ACC tournament, at least in this area. That's just my feeling. I don't know if you share the same sentiment or not.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, I've tried, but I mean, especially, you know, with all the stuff that's going on with college basketball now, with the
Yeah.
portal and when it opens, I mean, this is a sport that, you know, for a while we had a pretty decent off season, and you
Yep.
knew, okay, it goes dead. They will come back and they'll start practice, you
Hmm.
know, in September. That's
Yep.
not the case anymore. I mean,
Right.
it's bordering on 365. I don't think it's quite there. There's a little bit of dead
Mhm.
time in the summer, but there is, you know, still some recruiting stuff. So with as crazy as that is, and I think as crazy as, you know, college football is, I mean, the second portal
Yeah.
window opening up now, like it's just there's so much stuff that you have to follow with the two major sports that I
Mhm.
think it's really hard for a lot of people to keep up with college baseball. And look, it stinks because there are a lot of really good college baseball teams in
Yeah.
this area. And
Mhm.
especially this year, you're seeing a lot of really good teams. But yeah, I'm with you, man. I just, to me, like I keep up with my major league team. I'm so focused on all the other stuff that's
Mhm.
going on that, yeah, once we get to the ACC tournament, I'll be stoked, especially the way that Carolina's playing.
Right.
I think they still got their unbeaten streak going on at home right now, which I think is up to like 28 or 29 games,
Mhm.
which is crazy. So I think, you know, once it gets around that time, I'll be excited. But yeah, I can't say I lock in on the college baseball year round.
Yeah, I'm the same. Like I say, and it's kind of like what you were just mentioning. It's the fact that there's never really off time. There used to be, like you said, you would get to the first weekend in April, you get your national champion crowned in basketball. September practices would start back up. People really didn't start to really focus on it though. I'll use the Tar Heels Halloween event that they always do, Midnight Madness. That's when people would get right into it and go, okay, here we go. Let's take off with it. But you had that big lull there. But but even then, folks would still kind of gravitate to baseball, and I kind of do the same thing. I think it's fatigue for me because I'm a St. Louis Cardinals fan. I know you're a Mets fan. And when you try to follow that 162 game Major League Baseball season, that almost wears you out in itself just for the regular season. So it makes you not want to focus on the college baseball on top of trying to keep up with the two sports. Because I'm like you, I'm more of the football basketball guy when it comes to college. Everything else is pretty cool to watch, and I'll take it in, but I'm not going to give it as much concentration as I would anything else. So, let's just go ahead and really just skim through. Who do you think, just based on your limited knowledge, is probably going to be your baseball powerhouse this year? I know you haven't been able to watch much of it, but in terms of college baseball, who do you think is probably going to be your team to look out for there?
Well, I'll stick in the ACC. I mean, there's a couple
Yeah.
teams that are having really good years. I think Carolina is definitely, as good as it gets, especially
Yeah.
at home. But that's going to be the concern, is that when they are away from Boshemer Stadium, how
Yeah.
good do they actually play? Duke's having a really amazing year as well. But the best team, I think, in this area, just from what they've done this year, is Clemson. I mean, 30-5 I saw the other day. I know Wake Forest started the year really well, but this seems like the team that's really evolved into the best team in this area. And so
Mhm.
I think that's probably the team that's the most dangerous. But I mean, look, the thing is that Carolina's got a lot of experience on their roster with guys like Vance Honeycutt and a couple other guys that have been around for a while. Duke's another team that has brought back a lot. So I think they'll both be, tough competitors for Clemson. But I really just think that Clemson, with where they stand right now, might be the team positioned to make the deepest run.
Definitely. Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of folks wouldn't even pick up on that because when you think Clemson, you just think football, even though it's been a struggle for them the last couple of years. But it's kind of funny how you mentioned State's a basketball school, even though they're trying to be football. Clemson's a football school that that's pretty much all they're ever going to be uh, in terms of what people are going to look at. So it'll be interesting to see how folks pick up on the baseball part of it. So let's go ahead and jump ahead to the football season because it's going to be here before we know it. And you've already been posting. I saw on X earlier today on your just following you on X there. You've already been posting about some pickups that the Tar Heels are already getting in, and they got a big get earlier today. So why don't you tell us about that one?
Yeah, four-star edge rusher Austin Alexander out of the state of Kentucky. Really, really solid player, guy that I really like and will project well. But really, the main thing is it kind of continues a trend. Carolina, when Mac Brown first came back,
Mhm.
he talked about really taking care of the state of North Carolina. And the
Yeah,
thing is they're not really doing a great job with a lot of the guys in the state, especially the top talent.
yep,
So what they've done is they've really just found ways to go outside the state and pick up really talented guys. They've really frequented the state of Georgia. That's something that I think has become, a big part of what they do because of Charlton Warren coming back, who's a guy that has, recruited in the SEC for years. And now they've got a few other guys that are former SEC coaches on the staff as well. So that probably makes it easier to go into those states. Tennessee's another one that they've done a really good job of recruiting out of. But this was an interesting one because he was a guy that really didn't visit campus a lot. They said what really sealed it for him was he took a secret visit to campus a couple of weeks ago, and it really just blew him away, and he ended up committing to the staff. So I think for them, they're looking outside of their normal footprint to find some of these really talented guys. And I think that's what they're going to have to do right now. They got to get creative because in state, I mean, look, it's not as easy. NC State's
right,
done a really good job and they value a lot of the guys in this state, but also a lot of your guys are being picked by the bigger
yeah,
schools around the country. You're seeing Georgia in here a lot. Michigan, who did a great job in the last recruiting class, recruiting Providence Day School very hard and picking up a couple of their guys that are going to probably be big parts of their success moving forward. It's just that's the thing is that, they wanted to build a fence around the state. I think it worked for a while, but for Carolina football, it's really this simple. If you want to start recruiting at the level that you were recruiting 2-3 years ago, you're going to have to start winning on the field and living up to expectations. And the biggest thing to doing that is finding a way to finish the year stronger. The last 2 years, they've just completely collapsed down the stretch.
yeah. I totally agree, and it's interesting too because they've had probably one of the best quarterbacks that a lot of folks are ever going to see, and a lot of what he accomplished kind of got overshadowed by the closure of each season over the last two seasons, like you talked about.
Yeah, and it's the reason, like I've said it, the guys on the team these last couple of years, like, I mean, he definitely deserves some of the blame because he
Sure.
definitely struggled down the stretch of the season. A lot of these
Yeah.
guys, man, you should be looking in the mirror at yourself and saying,
Hmm.
guys, the reason why Merrill Hodge is destroying him in the
Yep.
pre-draft process, the reason that other guys are questioning what he can be is because we didn't do our jobs. And
Right.
that's the thing that's really, I mean, you just look at, I mean, losing 4 straight to
Hmm.
close the 2022 season. Then last year, you start the year 6-0. It's the best start in I forget how many years it was. But I mean, the vibes around the program are great. Everybody's feeling it. Okay, last year, they've learned from last year. And you get to that final stretch of the season, and they win 2 games, a
Yeah.
game against FCS Campbell and a game against a Duke team that had a third string quarterback. So, I mean,
Mhm.
it's just that's what's frustrating because it feels like this team, and Mac Brown said it, this team feels like they are right on the edge of being a college football playoff contender in the expanded 12-team playoff. They really feel like they're there. It's just for some reason they can't close the season strong. And I mean, you look at the way that this team is played, in the trenches, that's an area that's got to get better. But I mean, it's just, it really, to me, goes back to the coaching and wondering, is there really that connection there when it comes to things getting tough? I've wondered that for a couple of years now that, hey, when things go wrong, is Mac Brown and his staff really the group that is connecting with these guys to say,
Right.
this is what we need to do to get it back on track? Because they just can't seem to do it.
Yeah, totally agree with you on that. And you mentioned how when Mac got here, he talked about making North Carolina better in terms of trying to treat the state better in terms of getting players. And it made me think back to when he left North Carolina the first time and went over to Texas. And I remember watching a press conference, and he said, we've got to do a better job of recruiting in the state. We're letting all these great Texas talents leave the state and go play elsewhere. And he was absolutely right then with what he was trying to do at Texas, and absolutely right with what he said when he came back here to North Carolina. We've got to do better in the state, and they're doing obviously the right things to bring in the right players. But just like you just said, if they continue to have these letdowns late in the season, you're going to have a lot of these players that you might be able to pull in that are going to go, well, this didn't work out the way I thought it would. I'm jumping in the portal and going somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You got to worry about guys on your own roster. And then, in high school, I mean, that's the thing is that they look at it. They laid it out earlier this offseason. Him and Patrick Sudis, who's a guy that's basically in the modern era of college football, you basically have to have a GM. That's your guy that
Yeah.
handles all the
Yep.
NIL stuff and everything like that. And they said, look, we're going to use the transfer portal, but we're going to use it to supplement the areas that we need to fill in after we get through high school recruiting. So they value high school recruiting more than they value the transfer portal. I don't know how smart that is, to be honest, because I think the transfer portal is really how you build teams in both major sports nowadays. Probably the same thing really throughout all of college athletics. But I mean, if in order to get these guys, I mean, the relationships, I don't doubt that Mac Brown's doing a good job of keeping the relationships. The
Right.
thing that I'm wondering is when kids see a team fail towards the end of the season the way they have the last 2 years, they probably say to themselves, do I really want to be a part of a team that falters down the stretch like that? Or do I want to be a part of a team, even, in the state of North Carolina, like NC State, that has closed the season strong, or go, out of state if I am getting recruited by some of the bigger powers and go to a team that I know can make it to the college football playoff each
Yep.
year. That's the thing that I think that this staff is struggling with right now. And the best cure for it is winning.
Yeah. Well, obviously, from being on the show and me texting into the show and all that, I'm a Clemson football fan. And at least I will say this, North Carolina, even if they're just minimally looking at the transfer portal, they're doing a whole lot better than Dabo's doing with it, because he just continues to have zero interest in getting in that portal. And I really attribute that to being a lot of their struggles since the transfer portal has come into existence.
The only team in the FBS that has not pulled somebody from the
Yeah.
transfer portal in this cycle. That is just insanity. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Like, look, it's hard to question a guy that's had the success that he has when you have multiple national titles. But the thing is that the sport is evolving around you, Dabo, and
Right.
it feels like you're kind of just sitting there. And I mean, I don't know. Are you trying to weather the storm? Because this is not something that's just passing through. This is
Right.
the new wave of college sports, and especially with how popular it has become and
Mm-hmm.
how much coverage it gets, it ain't going anywhere. So I
Yeah.
think at some point, like especially like The areas that they've struggled, offensive line, you can find plenty of offensive line help in the portal. Wide receiver, I mean, there are a ton of guys every
Yeah.
single year that are
Yep.
all-American caliber players that you can bring in to help a quarterback like Cade Klubnik, who I think is a really solid quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to help him out. He doesn't have the weapons
Yeah.
that guys like Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson had. And if you had those guys in there, which you can get in the portal, I think it could make a world of difference for him.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, he definitely does not have the supporting staff that he could have if they were to get in there and do some work on that. Let me ask you this. So we'll stay on Clemson for just a minute, but I do want to jump over to another team in just a moment, just while we're talking about the transfer portal. So Ryan Day Jr., ended up taking a visit to Clemson. And I don't know if Ryan Day Jr. rings a bell for you, but you may know his dad, Ryan Day, who's the
Yes. Oh, of
coach of
course.
the Ohio State Buckeyes. And it was interesting that Dabo, ended up having both of them there to take a visit around, campus and all that. I know a lot of folks that I talk with that, are real big into Clemson football. They weren't too happy about it. And I've tried to explain to folks, and maybe you'll see it my way. Maybe you may agree with them. Their concern was, well, he's letting this other coach come in and see everything they do. And my thought process on it was, well, he probably wasn't not out there having a full practice going, well, here's our playbook, Ryan. Go ahead and take a look at it. But at the same time, with the way technology is today, it doesn't take these guys much to figure out what the other team's going to do in terms of their game plan if they ever run into each other and play each other on the field.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think that he was wearing, the glasses that we saw the Michigan assistant wear last year on the sidelines to record. And you're right. I think one of the things that people like, guys, if he is coming on campus with his son and they know that he's going to be there on that specific day, because it was,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know what class he's in. I haven't really heard a whole lot about him. So I'd assume
27.
27,
Yeah.
incredibly young. So he's
Yeah.
not on campus for an official visit. He's not there for 3 days and they're showing him all different
Right.
stuff. He's there for one day. I'm assuming that if there was a practice that day, he probably said, hey, when they come through, we're not really going to show them anything because
Yep.
we got an opposing head coach that's coming through our building.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I mean, look, I think it's cool that Ryan Day, even though he runs his own program, is telling his son, look, man, let's go and find the best place
Yeah.
for you. Because there are some guys that would be like, no, you're coming here, you're playing for me, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he really wants to find the best spot for him. But yeah, I mean, I don't like Clemson fans. I mean, it's always going to be like this. There are fans in every fan base that are going to
Yep.
overreact like this. But I mean, the thing is, I don't think that Dabo is giving away any house secrets when he's on this visit. I think it was, it's probably something that's being blown out of the proportion. But the other thing is that I think it really shows you kind of where Clemson fans are at, man, where, yeah, there's been that success that Dabo's had in his career, but I think the last couple of years, I'm not going to say they've soured fans on him, but I think it definitely has created less margin for error for the fan base, and it allows fans to be a little more critical than they were in the past.
Absolutely agree. So you're helping me segue here because you mentioned how cool it was for Ryan Day to take his son and go, hey, let's go put you in the best place that's going to be right for you versus making you come play for me. So I want to talk about Deion and Sanders and Shador Sanders. I don't know how you feel about Shador, but I think he's actually a really good quarterback. I don't think he gets a lot of the credit that he deserves because I think he gets overshadowed by Deion. But Colorado was like 14 players in the transfer portal right now for that team. And I know that's I kind of found it interesting that Deion kind of shrugged it off like it's not that big of a deal, even though he made such a huge deal coming into the season about all these players who are leaving him being there in Colorado, as talking about how they were the best players out there. Colorado is going to be this big school. And now all of a sudden, these same players that he called the best players out there, like, yeah, they can go. We'll get somebody else.
It is honestly one of the weirder things I've seen in college sports before. I mean, I got to be honest. I think it's very a lot of the guys I think get there, and especially some of these highly rated prospects,
Mhm.
and they realize that things get very political. That's kind of how
Yep.
it feels, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah. Yeah.
feels like if Dion really takes a liking to you, no matter how hard you practice, how
Mhm.
well you play, you're going to be out there. And I think also it probably, you have to probably be pretty friendly with his sons as well. I think your
Yeah.
relationship with them, and that's
Yeah.
what I think frustrates a lot of these guys.
Yep.
Is that, they probably look at the way that he treats his sons, thinks
Mhm.
that it's preferential treatment. He also is very infatuated with Travis Hunter, basically
Yeah.
calls him his son, says
Yep.
that, I mean, we've had the quotes of him saying that he's going to determine where his sons and Travis Hunter end up playing in the
Yep.
NFL. There's a list of five franchises that are acceptable. Everything else is off the table.
Mhm.
I think it's just, look, man, I thought when he first got there that the Hollywood type feel,
Yep.
and the fact that he was just seen as a polarizing leader would draw people there. And I wonder to myself, though, would the shtick hold up? Would he actually turn out to be a good coach? Would he be able to bring in the right guys around him that would make this a place that people would not only want to go to but stay? And I think we're getting our answer pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I think we saw all the talk last year at the start of the year when they were having success against teams that we probably should have known they would have some success against. Now, don't get it wrong, man. That start to the season, the first game of the year was
Yeah.
amazing. Shador Sanders, you're right.
Mhm.
He doesn't get talked about enough. He will. I think once he gets, once we get past this draft class, he's going to
Mhm.
be in that next draft class, I would expect. I don't think he's going to hang around another year in college football after next year.
Right.
But he'll start to get talked about. He'll probably be, in my mind, probably the number one quarterback in that draft class. So the
Yeah.
respect will be there for him. Travis Hunter's a really great player as well.
Mhm.
They'll still have eyes on them this year, but I don't know if they're going to catch anybody off guard this year right out of the gate. I think people are going to be prepared, know that
Yeah.
it's a team that's going to put up a fight. But I think
Mhm.
ultimately, as the season goes along, especially with all the guys that they're losing,
Mhm.
like, this is a team that's going to have no depth. And the talent that's there, I mean, yeah, there are some really talented guys there, but that talent, I mean, how is it going to blend? Because so much of it is, again, from the transfer portal, guys that are out of high school, because you lost a ton of guys that you just brought in last year. It feels like there's just so much roster turnover that I know Dion said last year, get us now while you can. But I feel like it's almost going to feel like you're starting over again with where you were at the start of last year for them. And I feel like that could kind of feel like every year.
Yeah. Definitely. So let me ask you. I know it's way early. You haven't even started the season yet, but who do you think, in terms of who's the team to watch for in college football this coming season?
I think well, I mean, team to watch for. I think the
Yeah.
best team is Georgia. I think it's
Yeah.
very clear. Carson Beck, I think, is maybe the best quarterback in the entire sport. And that was a team that fell short of the playoff last year. They felt like they should have been in. And so now, expanded playoff field, I mean, unless something dramatic happens, that
Yeah.
team is not going to miss out on the playoff this year. I think they're going to be extra, there's going to be extra motivation for them.
Hmm.
And I really think that is going to power them to make a run and probably ultimately win the title. But I mean, look, there are some teams now with the playoff field expanded that I really do think have a chance to step up and make an impact. I think, as crazy as it is, and the thing is I just told you how great Georgia is. They're in the same division as them.
Yeah.
But I think Missouri's going to be really good again this year too. And
Yeah.
it pains me because that means that I have to hear Willie P bragging about his Tigers. But he's going to deserve it, man, because I'm telling you, they've brought in a lot of talent again in the transfer portal to supplement what they lost. I think that Eli Drinkowitz is a guy that has done a really good job of just inspiring those kids there. And it seems like they have really bought into what he's selling. And that's a group that I think is going to have a chance for the first time in a long time, I think, coming into the season to legitimately be the team that will be the biggest threat to Georgia. And I think that's probably where you look. I mean, ACC wise, I mean, I think Clemson still has a really good chance. I know that there's a lot of questions about with them not going into the transfer portal. I know people are questioning their offense after the spring game, but to
Yeah.
me, I think this is a group that is still hearing all the narratives about them. I think defensively they're going to be tremendous. And I think another year in the system for Cade Klubnik can only help him. I think this will be the year where they will take another step forward and legitimately solidify themselves as the best team in the ACC. Because, when it comes to Florida State, I question DJU. I have
Yeah.
his entire career, and I just don't
Yeah.
know if him going back into the ACC after a solid year at Oregon State. But you saw
Yeah.
when they played their toughest opponents, he struggled a little bit. I
Mhm.
don't really know if that's what they need to stay where they were last year. NC State, I mean, I think the thing with them is it's NC State football, and we just don't know. I'm also a little concerned about Grayson McCall and the
Mhm.
injuries that he's had throughout his career, especially the head injuries that he's dealt with. Is he going to be able to stay on the field the whole year? So I think that avenue for Clemson opens up, and they're probably the ACC's best threat. But yeah, Georgia, man, they are head and shoulders above everybody, I think.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I'm gonna have to put in a warning here just in case Willie P does watch this. I'm gonna have to put in a warning of about 30 seconds before you say what you said about Missouri. So if he's gnawing on that way, if he's gnawing on some dry brisket, he doesn't like choke himself trying to take his voice up to
Oh, man. Ah.
Well, Anthony, so tell us real quickly. I know we talked about Heel Tough Blog and Four Corner Podcast briefly. Where can folks check those out?
Well, the best place, Steve, is heeltoughblog.com because that's where you
Yeah,
can check out the podcast and you can check out all of the articles in one spot. But hey, if you like seeing this face and you like seeing Fitty's face as well, we do all the football ones are live podcasts
yeah.
all the time, and the basketball ones, for the most part, we do the live podcast. So you can always head over to our Facebook page as well and check out all that stuff. And of course, the podcast, just as you can do probably with this podcast, you can subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. We're in all of the major sites like Apple, Google Podcasts, all that great stuff. So make sure that you check all of that out. And heeltoughblog.com, though, is the place where you can get everything all in one spot.
Awesome. Well, hopefully folks will check it out. I'm sure they will, especially if they've enjoyed this conversation we've had tonight. Before we wrap up, I always ask my guests like 3 questions that don't really have anything to do with anything we've talked about. I had Brittany Van Voorhees on yesterday, and I'm going to ask you the same 3 questions I asked her because it was kind of interesting getting her responses. So the
Oh,
first one was the first one was if you could have any superpower for the rest of your life, what would that be?
I would probably say teleportation. It just makes
Yeah.
it easier to get places and to get places quick. I'm a dude that's got a pretty busy schedule. And the thing is if I did that, I would be able to wake up at 5:30, snap my fingers, and
Yep.
be at the studio and not have to get up extra early. So I think that's what I'm gonna go with.
Pretty long drive from Union County into the studio that early in the morning as it is. So
Oh,
I understand
yes.
completely. Well, it's interesting because your answer was very similar to her. She said flying because she said she liked to be able to travel, and she felt like the fastest way to get anywhere right now would be if she could just fly and just fly from one spot to the next.
There you go. I like it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, what is if you could only select one kind of food for the rest of your life, one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh, man.
I know that's a tough one.
Man, because as you know, I love some food.
Oh yeah,
Um, now I would look, man. I'm Italian, and I mean I know it's not traditional Italian, but I'm also a New York Italian.
hmm.
So for me, it's got to be pizza, man.
Oh
There
yeah,
nothing beats a good New York slice.
New York pizza.
There's so many great, spots that I found in this area, but
Hmm.
especially when you go back up to New York, man, when you go to your favorite pizza spot, you sit down and you get you a nice slice of just regular cheese pizza from a spot that knows how to make it. There's
Hmm.
nothing better than that. So I got to go with pizza.
That's awesome. My wife, it's kind of funny. My wife laughs at me because I like Philly cheesesteaks, but I can't get her to understand Philly cheesesteaks are pretty good in this area, and it's not hard for somebody to make a Philly cheesesteak, but the best Philly cheesesteak you're ever going to get is in Philly itself. It's just not
Right.
going to be different. Definitely. So, last question would be, oh my gosh, my mind just went blank on what it was that I asked her yesterday now. So give me just 1 second on that while I think about it.
That's all good.
So yeah, so we did food, we did superpower. Oh yeah, I know what it was now. So if on a day where you do not have to get up and go to WFNZ, you don't have anything planned and all that, it's just a flounder me day. What would be the best thing you could do for that entire day?
Man, I mean, the thing is like there really aren't many of those days.
I know, right?
So I mean, I love I love watching sports a
Yeah,
lot. I think really the answer for me is just, being able to go out and hang out with the family. Especially like if we go out and maybe, go like, especially when I was younger, go to like an amusement park or something like that.
yeah.
Really just family time, man, because that's to me, I mean, as important as sports is, and you've seen it from the way that we've talked throughout
Oh yeah,
tonight, my family's the most important thing for me.
absolutely.
So I think that just a day hanging out with them would be amazing.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm glad you said that because you made me think, and I didn't want to get through this episode without talking about it. So I know you guys are a little bit closer to Mark Baker than I am because you met him in person and all that. Mark and I have not had the chance to meet each other in person yet, but I'm certainly going to make that happen. But for folks that have been watching, I talked about this with Willie P. I had Willie P on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about Mark and just how special he is to WFNZ. But you guys, even with Willie, you guys have even a deeper relationship with Mark than Willie does. So, just real quick, thoughts on Mark and everything he brings to not only WFNZ but to the Charlotte area itself.
Uh, I mean, he brings life. That's
Yeah.
really the best way to say it. I mean, he's a guy that is just so positive and has always been his entire life because, as he's told us, many times, and especially when he's been going through this, this was a guy that's been fighting his entire life
Hmm.
because when he was little, he was given 6 months to live when he was
Yeah.
born. They told him, "Look, you've got holes in your heart." Told his parents. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
Could have told him he was a baby, but like,
Yeah.
I mean, like it's a dude that just has had just the most positive outlook on life. And to see him struggle in the way that he is, man, it just
Hmm.
sucks. Like every time that
Yeah.
we talk to him, like, I mean, he knows. I talked to him earlier today on the phone, and
Hmm.
the thing is that even you see some of those vulnerable moments from him, but you still see the Mark that we know, man, where he just
Yeah.
makes you laugh, he makes you
Yeah.
chuckle with just about everything that he says because it's just he's a bigger than life type of guy. He cares so much about his friends, about his family.
Mhm.
And he's always been the guy. He used to dress up in the costumes and everything
Yeah.
like that. And people would say, well, why would he do that? Is he just dressing up because he's trying to be a character? He's not.
No.
He dressed up because he truly wanted to, do something that would get people laughing. Whenever we were out, I mean, I remember plenty of times we go out to viewing parties and little kids would say, "Hey, there's Batman," or "There's
Yeah.
Superman," or whatever he was dressed up with, and he would
Hmm.
take pictures with them like he was
Hmm.
just, a guy at an amusement park that was doing a job. But for him, it's not. It's he
Right.
loved bringing that joy to people, loves bringing that joy to people, even still to this day. And that's the thing that's amazing, man. And there's a couple things that he's got coming up. April 30th, he's going to be out throwing the
We're
first
out the
pitch of the
first
Knights
pitch.
game.
Yeah.
He announced that the other day. I think it's going to be a 7 o'clock first pitch, so that'll be
Hmm.
really cool. And then we're currently in the works on something fundraiser for him at the doghouse
Yeah.
here in a couple of weekends. So we want to make sure that we have all the details ironed out before we give you guys all the official stuff for that. But the cool thing is that It's done by a listener, Robin the Duke fan. Many of you guys probably know him if you're someone from WFNZ that's listening in. He's a guy that dealt with cancer multiple times himself, and he wanted to do this for Mark. And so they're doing everything they possibly can to get this event going. And so I think that's just the really special part when you look at this entire situation, is how positive Mark has remained, but also just the outpouring of support from people in the local community. And we're
Yeah.
talking about people that, have listened to the show for years and just love him, to people that, really, I don't know if they knew a ton about him, but they've learned about him in the local, media, anything like that. And the support has been unbelievable. And it even extends out to former Panthers, former Tar Heels,
Yes.
even into just national people that have
Mhm.
no idea who Mark is until, Travis sort of sat down and told them about him. And
Yeah.
they have really become connected to the story. One of the cool stories that's come out of this, Steve, really quickly,
Oh, yeah.
it's just, there was a guy that a lot of people probably know for his flamboyant videos on social media. He's from Barstool, Frank the Tank, and he's
Yeah.
a guy that, I mean, look, man, we know who he is, but
Mhm.
he's a guy. Bone reached out to him. He said, look, man, my buddy Mark's going through this. It'd be great if you could put together a video for him. Frank makes the video for him in a Frank-like fashion. It's awesome.
Mhm.
Frank's a guy that followed Mark, and since he's been following every step of his journey. He likes
Mhm.
everything that he puts up, all the photos, all the videos, all that kind of stuff. And that's the amazing thing, is that this dude from Gastonia, North Carolina,
Yeah.
that was given 6 months to live at birth, has become a guy that somebody from Barstool Sports is following his journey and is rooting for him. It's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned Frank the Tank there, and then Tim Brando. Obviously, he's a
Yep.
guy that national guy, been around forever, and one of the guys I love to hear call any kind of sport. But just yesterday, Mark was kind of filling down in the dumps, as you would expect with what Mark's going through, and he
Yeah.
had sent something out on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, and Tim Brando responded back and said, "Hey, Mark, just keep fighting, man," and gave him the retweet and the like and everything. And so, yeah, really cool to see that. And then you mentioned about the costumes, and you guys had Mark called into the show a couple weeks ago, and it's actually funny because I actually teared up just a little bit during the phone call, and Mark said, I never knew what I was good at, but I felt like I was good at putting a smile on somebody's face. And man, when he said that, it teared me up, man. I had to get the Kleenexes out.
Yeah. Oh, dude, trust me. I mean, everybody in the studio was feeling the exact same way. And that's the thing, is that that's really been his mission, and he's done a great job of it, man. And to this day, and that's the thing, to this day, he still makes you feel that way. When I talked to him earlier today, man, there were multiple times that I just couldn't help but laugh because he was just making me chuckle. And that's the best part about Mark, man. And the thing is that I mean, I know that the details we haven't been giving you guys nearly
Yeah,
as much here recently, but I mean, look, he's fighting, man. He's
he
going to
is.
keep fighting until the end, and that's
Yeah,
the best part. So, I know that he's gonna be out there throwing out that first pitch,
yeah,
and hopefully we'll be able to get this event going for him. But it's going to be really cool to continue
yeah.
to follow his journey, which I think still has a long way to go.
Definitely. Well, if you do get that event at the doghouse going for them, let me know, because I would be more than happy to share that on my platforms and stuff. And
Definitely.
for those watching, I have over 35,000 followers. And if you just gave $1, I mean, if everybody just gave $1, that's huge for Mark right now. So, for those of you watching, please definitely consider that. I have thousands more that are going to look at this on my website. So again, just give $1. At the very least, give $1 and help the man out. He's certainly going through a battle, and trust me, I can tell you from just my knowledge of Mark, and I know Flounder here can back me up on it. If the roles were reversed, Mark would give you the shirt off his back. He really
Yes.
would. So, and he probably still would right now. So,
He said, "You want this one right here?" Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Well, Flounder, thank you so much for joining us. You can check him out. As he said, go to hilltoughblog.com and you can get everything there. You can also watch the podcast with him and Fitty Marlowe, and certainly some great information on there. And check them out also on the Mac and Bone Show on WFNZ Monday through Friday. Those guys are. I'm telling you, that's the first part of my day every single day, all year long. I mean, really. So, and I certainly enjoy every minute of it. But thanks for joining us here tonight.
Thanks so much, Steve, for having me on, man.
Absolutely.